As we've been reporting tonight, the U.S. Embassy in Yemen is closed because U.S. officials believe al-Qaeda is planning to attack it. That and the Yemen connection in the Christmas Day airliner attack have put that Middle Eastern nation at the top of the headlines. But Yemen has been a prime concern of U.S. defense and intelligence officials for much longer. Pentagon correspondent Chris Lawrence joins us now with more. Hi, Chris, tell us what's the latest first on the U.S. Embassy in Yemen and al-Qaeda's militants there.
Yeah, possible retaliation. Officials tell us right now the U.S. and Yemen are looking at fresh targets for a possible strike against al-Qaeda. Let's show you where. Here's the capital. Here's the U.S. Embassy, which Jessica just mentioned remains closed. And you can take a look here as we widen out just a little bit. There we go. And you can see what we're told is that back on December 17th, the U.S. coordinated and possibly and most likely took place a missile strike here and here on December 17th. We're told they were going after some of the al-Qaeda militants who were plotting to blow up the U.S. Embassy. Now, 3 were killed. One of them was captured with his suicide vest still on. Under interrogation, he gave authorities enough information to launch a second strike here on Christmas Eve. Now, despite that and those attacks, 4 of those suspects did get away. They still pose a threat to the embassy, and that's why it remains closed, Jessica.
All right, Chris, first of all, good job with the magic wall. I've tried doing that. Not easy. Question for you. Is Yemen's government there truly committed to confronting al-Qaeda? Does the U.S. have a real partner in fighting al-Qaeda there?
Well, last year, the U.S. gave them about $70 million to help beef up the security. Here's where some of our money went. These are Yemen's counterterrorism forces in action last month going after al-Qaeda. We're also told that right now, today, they are fighting in the eastern part of the country over here. In fact, the Yemen government says they have killed 2 of those al-Qaeda members who were plotting to blow up the embassy. But they've got other concerns as well. Down here in the south, you've got a group that is trying to succeed from the national government, an ongoing religious civil war here in the north. But they've got to get a handle on al-Qaeda because just over the border, Saudi Arabia, here are those Saudi oil fields, one of the world's largest oil-producing countries. And the real worry is that al-Qaeda can use the instability in the north to start launching more attacks in Saudi Arabia.
All right,
Jessica?
Chris. Thanks for that. We're going to keep discussing this. So now let's turn to Gregory Johnson. He's one of the country's leading experts on Yemen. He co-writes Walk I'll Walk, a blog about Yemen. And also with us, Marissa Porges with the Council on Foreign Relations. She is a former Pentagon counterterrorism advisor. Thanks to both of you for being with us. First to you, Marissa. Let me ask you, so we understand what we're dealing with, how big is the al-Qaeda threat in Yemen? How many al-Qaeda terrorists are there?
It is a very serious concern. The threat has been growing lately. We saw al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula unite both the Saudi units and the Yemeni-based units of al-Qaeda operatives just in the past year or 2. And estimates now are in the range of a couple hundred. It's unclear, some as low as 100, but we've heard over the weekend that some experts think over 300 trained operatives that are actively trying to instigate attacks. But more importantly, Yemen presents a major source of recruitment and radicalization, and so there's potential that they could use that as a source for a lot more al-Qaeda operatives in the future. Right,
so a few hundred and growing. Gregory, if you could paint us a picture a little bit. My understanding is Yemen is one of the poorest of all Middle Eastern nations. It's riven by internal divisions. It has a corrupt government. So what is the context? What are we dealing with there? And do we have a real partner in the war against al-Qaeda in that government?
Right. Well, I think when talking about Yemen, it's really easy to be overwhelmed by all of the crises that the government is facing. So we talked about the war in the north. There's increasingly violent calls for secession in the south, as well as the al-Qaeda resurgence. The president is weaker now than he's been in recent memory. The government is losing money as oil exports decline. It's losing water. Corruption is rampant. There's massive unemployment. Poverty is there. There's a great and growing birth rate. And so all of these things are things that al-Qaeda has been able to use, particularly things like corruption, in forming its narrative and really constructing a very persuasive case as it presents itself to the Yemeni public, particularly through its videos and its bi-monthly journal.
Marissa, why did we close our embassy now? Was it because of the Christmas Day terror plot, or was there more going on?
Well, the reports have indicated that there's related suggestion of imminent attacks on Western targets from Sana'a. We just heard a description of some of what was going on there. But I also think there's another layer at play, and that's and how we're trying to pressure the Yemeni government to do more about al-Qaeda and the terror situation. When combined with Secretary Clinton's strong statements, a visit by General Petraeus over the weekend, we can see that the closure of the embassies are a signal that we're serious, and if the security situation doesn't improve, we might pull out our diplomats, and with it a lot of potential aid and international support. If the U.S. does that, soon other international organizations might follow, and Yemen really counts on international support from us, from NGOs, from the World Bank, for a lot of the problems Gregory just mentioned.
So it's almost political pressure in addition to the actual security threat. Gregory, if I can ask you, how do you judge the administration's response in Yemen so far? General Petraeus was there and said we're going to double our military aid. The Pentagon sort of walked that back, but clearly it'll increase. Is that the right answer?
Well, I think it's important when talking about Yemen to realize that there are no easy or obvious solutions. And the U.S. should be quite upfront and quite clear with itself that it's not going to defeat al-Qaeda in Yemen today, tomorrow, next month, or even next year. The organization is just too strong and too well entrenched in Yemen. So it's going to take a very patient, a coordinated response, something that deals with the local context, something that's nuanced and multifaceted. And unfortunately, to this date, the U.S. just hasn't shown that it's ready to do that.
Marissa, your prediction, will the U.S. send troops into Yemen, and should we?
I don't think that's the near-term answer, both because of the realistic constraints that Afghanistan and Iraq have placed on the U.S. military, but also to go to what Gregory was just describing, it does take a much more nuanced response. And I think officials in the U.S. and abroad are thinking along those lines now, and hopefully the gathering that'll happen in London later this month will come out with a response that's not just military and not just counterterrorism focused, but gets at some of the other concerns. So no, it isn't necessarily a military-only answer, and so therefore I don't think it will just be boots on the ground.
Marissa Porges, Gregory Johnson, thank you.